I'm scared. Okay. Devega Elysse a présenté avec succès les épreuves de l'examen. Bitch, they said I wouldn't do it. Okay. Production écrite. That's the writing. No fucking way. 25 out of 25? How the fuck did I do that? How did I do that? Welcome, bienvenue. This is a video about the DALF C1 exam, whether you're thinking about taking it, if you're just curious about why a person would torture themselves in this way. I didn't take the exam for any external reasons. Like, a lot of times people take these language certification exams because there's an institution requiring them to, like, work or school or, like, for immigration purposes. I, however, answer to no one. I just decided to take this test because I thought it would be fun. I was curious if I could pass it, and hey, I have a piece of paper now and I framed it. I even put cute little scrapbooking paper around it. Does this paper mean anything? That's not for me to answer, not in this video at least, but it sure is pretty. I took this exam in June of last year. Yes, I am aware that it's now February. Late is better than never, however. I studied very vigorously for about a month and a half before the exam. I would say though, like 90% of that studying was crammed into the last week before the exam, so I don't know. But it turned out really well, you guys. I got an 87 out of 100 on the exam in total, and we'll go specifically into my, like, scores in the specific sections in this video. We're going to talk about the specific sections and the skills that they test on the DALF C1 exam, my experience on the day of the test, as well as like how I prepared for each section and my general kind of strategy and tips for each part. Just a disclaimer though, I don't want this video to be too long and overwhelming, so I'm actually going to make a separate guide or like a mini course soon specifically for people that want to take this exam and do really well. I feel like I have some authority in this domain because I did score over 20 in all of the sections. I even got a perfect score on the writing. So in that, I'll go more detailed into like the strategy and tips that would be a lot more interesting for people actually in the stage of preparing for the exam, but this is just going to be like more of a general overview with my biggest takeaways. So, on y va. Let's start with what you need to know about the DALF C1 exam. This is a very prestigious diploma that will give you a lot of leverage in the French-speaking world, whether you want to work or study or live in France. The test is separated into 4 parts and you do them in this order. You have the listening, la compréhension de l'oral, the reading, la compréhension des écrits, the writing, la production des écrits, and lastly, the speaking exam, the production orale. Overall, essentially what the C1 test is trying to see is if you can communicate and comprehend in French easily in like a wide range of high-level topics. So society, economy, like technology, music, culture, technology, science, all this different stuff. And that's about it. That's what you need to know before you take the exam. Oh, and it costs like $200 to take it. So don't take it unless you're pretty sure that you'll get a good score, because otherwise you should probably take B2 or something lower. Okay, tout d'abord, la compréhension de l'oral. This section is about 40 minutes long in total. You have 2 different parts of the listening comprehension. In general, you're going to listen to audio clips and then answer comprehension questions about them. On the first part of the exam, you have like a longer audio to listen to, maybe like 8 to 10 minutes, and you have to answer multiple choice questions and short form, like written answer questions. In the second part, it's a lot quicker and simple. You have like anywhere from 2 to 4 short audios, maybe like 1 minute each, and you just have to answer a couple of multiple choice questions about them. So it goes a lot quicker, a lot lighter, but yeah, in general, this whole section with the 2 parts, it comes to like 40 minutes usually. To give you an idea of the content that's on the exam, on my day of the exam, my listening portion, the longer audio, the 8 to 10 minute one, it was about the scientific definition of cold and how to measure cold and things like that. And so it was a journalist interviewing like 2 different experts on the cold. Random, but interesting. I would say that's pretty typical of this part of the exam. On the longer audio, a lot of times it's like an interview or a debate or a discussion where there's multiple people involved. And on the second part of my exam, there were 2 short audios. One of them was about like work relationships between boss and employees, and the other one was about like a climate organization that's educating children about climate change. So those are just some examples of the kind of things that you could be tested on. My biggest tips overall for the listening section are to take notes in the margin as you listen, especially like any key points or phrases or words or just anything that you might be thinking is important for later on. And don't second guess your answers. Go with your gut. I think a lot of times with the multiple choices, they especially try to put answers that look good but aren't actually right, and they'll try to like stump you like that. So just go with your gut, do not second guess. So on this part of the exam, the compréhension de l'oral, I got a 21 out of 25, which is great. So that was my score on the listening comprehension section, and this is what I did to prepare. So first of all, you need to look these up. This is my #1 resource. I use these mock exams on the YouTube channel called French and You. They have a whole playlist of like mock exams for so many different levels, anywhere from like the A levels to the C levels. It is a great resource. It's the exact format of the exam on the day of. So like even like the instructions in the beginning, there's like a timer. So it's very immersive, and it prepared me not only for the content of the exam, but also like desensitized me from the pressure because I knew how the exam would feel on the day of. Also, consuming spoken French media, whether this is like watching the news, watching TV programs, listening to podcasts, radio. And lastly, if we're talking about the listening exam, also the speaking exam, but we'll get into that a little bit later, the number one thing I give credit to is doing the Lingoda sprint before the exam. If you don't know about Lingoda, it's an online language school that offers group and private classes in a handful of languages, so like German, English, business English, Spanish, and of course, Français. Picture this: small group classes and personal sessions with native level teachers, so no robotic, monotonous lessons. It's just real conversations and discussions with people. You just feel like you're chilling with friends who happen to speak your target language. It's a very immersive kind of environment. Before the class, you can check out the class material on Lingoda, and they also have vocab review tools so that when you're done with the class, after you can dive in and like reinforce what you just learned. Trust me, it is like a language gym for your brain. You know, you're training your speaking every day or every other day. You're getting exposed to so much new vocab, and you're building a habit while you're at it. And whatever your level or interests are, they have classes on everything. So it could be basic stuff like family and routine, or the advanced artsy-fartsy stuff like science and philosophy. And get this, they go all the way up to C1 in some languages and B2 in others, so you can go really, really far on Lingoda. Lingoda's French classes helped me build up my listening and my speaking confidence so much. Like, since I was practicing every other day, it kind of just helped me lose my fight or flight reflex while speaking French, because it just became such a normal habit. And now I've brought that into my everyday French, and I can call and catch up with my francophone friends without doubting myself so much and just panicking. Now for the real kicker, Lingoda is offering a discount if you click the link down in the description, and if you want to snag an extra $25 off your sprint, use the code Elysse 2024. Now, compréhension des écrits, the reading exam, let's talk about it. You have one text to read, 1,500 to 2,000 words, pretty much like a page and a half, and you have to answer anywhere from like, I don't know, 10 to 15 questions. Don't quote me, it can be different. But, and these questions are kind of like the listening where you have multiple choice, but you also have short form like writing responses. But these are kind of special because since it's reading and you have to pull evidence, you often have to like pull quotes or phrases from the text to like justify it. And those questions are often like true or false questions. So they'll make a statement like blah blah blah, vrai ou faux, and then you have to say yes or no, and then, you know, pull the quote or the text where it supports your answer. So it's pretty straightforward, just with a little bit more precision in the kind of questions that they're asking. My reading passage was about take your dog to work day in France, amener son chien au travail, and how that's becoming like a big kind of thing, how workplaces are implementing it, and the benefits and the psychological and social effects in the workplace. It was interesting. Again, I thought that this was my best section out of all of the sections. I was like, no doubt, 25 out of 25, but I got, what did I get? I got a 20 out of 25 on this part of the exam, which is actually the lowest I scored out of all of them, but that's still a very high score. So once again, I'm still happy, but I thought I slayed that even harder. For this section, the reading section, my biggest tips are to read the questions before you start reading the passage so that you know what to look for, you know what things to pay more attention to. That'll help you with answering the questions, and it'll save you some time. And also to keep in mind like the main ideas of each paragraph as you read. To prep for this part of the exam, it's no surprise that I read for it. I actually didn't prepare too much for the reading part of the exam, but when I did, I was reading French articles, I was getting involved on French Twitter and like reading threads and debates and things like that. So it's no wonder that reading will help you read better in any language. Production écrite. If you're not going to listen to any of the other tips that I mentioned in this video, at least listen to me in this section, because like I said, I got a perfect score in this part of the exam. Walk with me, okay? So there's two parts to this exam, and they're asking you to do very different things. On the first part, you have what's called the synthèse. This is a shorter text where you have a couple of documents, you have to read them, and you then summarize their arguments. You can compare and contrast them, but what you don't do is you don't give any personal opinions, you have no thoughts, you're merely an observer. You're synthesizing. That's why it's called the synthèse. My synthèse topic, the documents that I had to analyze and then synthesize, were about the future of the car versus the future of other means of transport, like public transport, bike, that type of stuff. It was just like, which one will prevail? And then the other part of the writing exam, the longer section, is the essai argumentatif, the argumentative essay, and this is where you have to argue a position from a prompt that they give you. Don't let the word essay scare you, because it's not always an essay per se. My prompt for the essay was actually a persuasive letter, and I had to persuade the mayor of my town to not ban car traffic in the city center. Something came over me and I assumed the personality of a mother of like 5. I was like, I live in a multi-generational home. I have to take my children to school. I have to take my elderly mother to her bingo games because she has a neurodegenerative disease. Don't even ask me how I remembered the words for neurodegenerative disease on the day of the exam. I didn't know I had those brain cells left. Anyways, I was just like, public transport is not handicap accessible. Please don't do this, Mr. Mayor. And they really liked it. That's what got me the 25 out of 25. Don't ask me why. Okay, my tips for the writing in general. This is something that you have to do. I'm ordering you. You have to make outlines before you start writing. Honestly, I feel like a lot of people, they just feel the stress of the time constraints, so they're like, oh, I have to start writing immediately, but you need a good plan before you go in and start making your points. So, you know, whether it's for the synthèse or for the essai argumentatif, you have to like have your body points, like the core things that you want to mention, and then, you know, just make sure you have a good intro and outro, and use connecteur logique. This goes for both the writing and the speaking exam. You know, these transitional like advanced phrases like cependant, néanmoins, en plus, en revanche, what have you. This will just give your writing like a twinge of sophistication, you know? And it also helps to like, you know, connect your arguments to one another. And to prepare for the writing, I literally only practiced like twice, and I used this book. What's it called? Le DALF 100% réussite, the C1, C2 level. This book gives you a lot of tips and information about the exam, but I just went straight to the back for the mock exams. So doing the mock exams and then checking what they have in the back and comparing mine to like what they think is the ideal example of the writing, that really just gave me a lot of perspective on how to approach the different parts of the exam. Now, lastly, la production orale. This is the part of the exam that I was objectively the most scared for, because for me, I feel like speaking carries the most weight. Like, that is the biggest proof for me, in my opinion, that someone can command a language well. So the breakdown of the speaking exam is you have an hour and a half. In the first hour, you're just preparing your exposé. This is like a 8 to 10 minute speech, kind of just like a spoken essay. I would think of it like a spoken essay, honestly. And then the actual speaking examination is 30 minutes long. So you give your exposé like 8 to 10 minutes, and then you talk and discuss with the jury. This is like a group. It could be 1 to 3 people. I just had one person interviewing me and debating me on my points afterwards, but yeah. Essentially, they'll just ask you follow-up questions once you're done with your speech, and you kind of just have to discuss and expand. So that's like the conversational part of it. If you're curious what you're actually doing in the exposé, you have to develop what's called a problématique, like a question, your own question that you create, and you have to explore it in your speech and, you know, make points, introduction, extraduction, conclusion, things like that. So they don't tell you what to talk about. They don't give you a prompt per se. It's like you have to synthesize your own question based off of whatever you have in front of you. And this could be a what, it could be a why, a how. So if the topic, for example, is global warming, your question could be who is most at fault, or like how do we reduce our carbon footprint? So whatever makes sense for the text that you have in front of you. But let's talk a bit more about the prep, that hour of prep that you have actually planning the exposé. So you walk in and you have to choose a paper, le tirage au sort, okay? There's a couple of topics and documents that you can choose from. If you have read anywhere on the internet that you get to pick between either sciences or humanities for this part of the exam, that is now false. That has not been true for a while. They changed the exam. You do not get to pick the domain. What you do get to choose is 2 topics out of whatever they have. This could be, you know, and whatever you pick, that could be 2 sciences, it could be 2 humanities, it could be 1 science, 1 humanity. You don't know. It could be anything, the 2 that you pick. But then from those 2, you get to choose the specific one that you want to talk about. Oh my god. I think on my day of the exam, the tirage au sort, it was like virtual reality and how it's implemented in like different like domains and then industries. And then the other one was about like birth rates. And I don't know how to talk about birth rates and like declining birth rate, or like I think it was the infant mortality rate. I was like, what the fuck do I know about that? So I chose virtual reality because I was like, I'm gonna nail Mark Zuckerberg with this one. So yes, like I said, you pick your thingy and then you have an hour of prep. Basically, I see it the same as planning an essay. It's just that you have to have it in mind to speak it. You're not just writing it. So yeah. And yes, like I said, I found a way to talk about Mark Zuckerberg and how he's ruining the world and how he's going to turn us all into robots. Something like that. It was a fever dream. I don't know. And my score on the speaking was 21 out of 25. I think I felt very collected because of the ways that I prepared. Like I said earlier, I prepped for the speaking part of the exam by doing the Lingoda sprint. So I was speaking like every other day and I just kind of lost the fight or flight reflex and I just felt a lot more collected with my speaking. And like also in the classes, I was getting acquainted with vocabulary and connecteur logique Belgique. So yeah, those were the group classes. But then closer to the exam date, I also did like a couple of mock run-throughs, like with the jury with an italki tutor. So we just kind of like role played it, I guess. So kinky. Shut up. The worms. And I also recorded myself. I recorded myself speaking a lot, both just like on my phone or on my webcam. Like I would act like, you know, I was giving the expose to the jury just and record myself, and then I would watch it back and like see what I thought I could improve and things like that. So yeah, my biggest tips for the speaking exam, first of all, is to speak slowly and take your time. Obviously not like at a glacial pace, but I think a point well made but just at a slower pace is better than trying to sound super native and speak really fast and then like your point isn't actually that good. They don't care. Of course accent goes into the grading and like your pronunciation, but I think it's more important for them that you know how to communicate and can make your points in French. So yeah, don't try to speak. I feel like this is something that I do. I'm kind of toxic. I'm like, oh, I just want to sound native and speak fast. But I tried to speak slower and take my time, like making my points, and I think that really counted in my favor. Avoid repetition. Try to phrase your points and like use different vocabulary, especially if you're returning to a topic. You don't just want to use the same vocabulary over and over and over. It shows that you don't have like that much resilience, or like you've learned how to talk about everything in just one way. So spend some time studying synonyms for words that you commonly use, and I think that'll go a long way. And lastly, memorize some phrases for your responses. Don't just keep saying je pense que, je pense que. You can vary it up, say like, oh, je suis en partie d'accord, effectivement, oui, pas du tout, à mon avis. That's also a classic. If I catch you saying je pense que on exam, you're done. Weeks of studying and $200 later, I do feel validated that yes, I speak French. But there's still a long way to go. Like honestly, the way that you guys, after I told you guys I did the mock exams with an italki tutor, at one point we were just having a normal conversation after we practice, and she was asking me like, oh, is your hair color natural or do you dye your hair? I didn't know how to say hair dye. I don't know how to talk about random everyday things like that. So I feel like my French still has a very long way to go in some aspects. But yeah, I got that certificate though. So il y a encore plein de choses dont je ne sais pas parler, et ça c'est la réalité de la vie. If you've taken the exam, let me know what your experience was, and if you feel like, do you agree or do you disagree? Does this mean anything on a larger scale? Does it mean that you actually have mastered the language if you get to see one? Et merci d'avoir regardé cette vidéo, comme toujours, et à bientôt. Bye bye.